Welcome to Deep Dive Lab, where we break down and dissect cutting-edge scientific research, from advanced biomedical technologies to breakthroughs in AI, materials science, chemistry, and physics, all told as compelling, easy-to-follow stories.
I'm really excited for this one.
Yeah, so to start us off, I want you to imagine that classic scene in, like, almost every sci-fi movie. You know the one?
Oh, definitely.
Right. The spaceship is cruising along, everything is totally fine, and then suddenly, bam, the main reactor goes offline.
The alarms start blaring.
Exactly. The alarms blare, the main system shut down, life support drops to the bare minimum, and, only those eerie, blinking red emergency lights remain on.
Right.
The ship is technically still flying, but, it's just limping through space.
And, that state of running on bare bones emergency power is actually a surprisingly perfect biological analogy for what happens inside human cells when they are deprived of their core biological spark plug.
Which brings us to this really massive, population-wide blind spot that we are going to explore today. Here's the strange question. Why are nearly 68% of U.S. adults secretly walking around, basically running on emergency power, even when their routine doctor checkups and, annual blood tests say everything is 100% normal?
Yeah, scientists have been unraveling this diagnostic illusion for decades, and it all centers around one specific mineral.
Just one.
Just one. But it's a nutrient so foundational that without it, your cellular engines literally just sputter out. But the standard ways we've been testing for it and the cheap ways we've tried to replace it have honestly kept us completely in the dark.
Okay, so don't leave us in suspense here. What exactly is this mystery mineral?
We are talking about magnesium.
Magnesium, okay.
Yeah, and to understand the sheer scale of the biological problem here, we really have to look at how central this mineral is to human life. Magnesium is the fourth most abundant mineral in the human body.
Okay, so we have a lot of it.
Well, the average adult has a total body pool of about 22 to 26 grams.
Wait, 26 grams? That honestly doesn't sound like a lot. 22 grams is roughly the weight of, a handful of paper clips.
It does sound small, right? But its biological footprint is just massive. Magnesium acts as a crucial cofactor for more than 600 enzymatic reactions in the body.
Wow. 600.
Yeah. And if you remember high school biology, you might recall ATC, adenosine triphosphate.
Oh, yeah. The powerhouse of the cell stuff.
Exactly. That's the energy currency of your cells.
Yeah.
So every time your heart beats, every time a neuron fires, or, every time muscle contracts, your body is spending ATP.
So it's essentially the fuel.
It's the fuel, yeah, but ATP actually cannot function on its own.
Oh, really?
Right. The ATP molecule itself is highly unstable. So to actually be biologically active and release energy, it must physically bind to a magnesium ion, which stabilizes it. So no magnesium, no cellular energy, your biological spaceship drops straight into emergency mode.
Okay, so if it's literally the spark plug for 600 different bodily functions, how on earth did we not notice that over half the population was running on empty? Wouldn't doctors be seeing this everywhere?
You'd think so. But for a long time, the medical community operated on the assumption that a standard diet provided enough magnesium to meet the recommended dietary allowance.
Right, the RDA.
Exactly. And for adults, that RDA is about 310 to 420 milligrams a day, depending on, age and gender. The belief was simply, if you eat food, you're getting enough.
But I'm guessing modern food isn't exactly what it used to be?
Oh, the data tells a very different story today. So researchers analyzing the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, that's the NHANES data, they found a really stark reality. A staggering 48% of people consume less than the estimated average requirement from just their food and beverages.
Wow, almost half.
Yeah, modern agricultural practices have seriously depleted the soil. Plus, the industrial refining of grains, it basically strips the mineral right out of our food before it even reaches the plate.
Wait, let me stop you right there, though. Because even if the food is depleted, when I go to my doctor for my annual physical, they take vials of blood, they run a comprehensive metabolic panel. Wouldn't a severe deficiency like that just show up in those routine labs?
And that right there is the crux of the entire mystery. That's why it went unnoticed for so long. Standard blood tests measure serum magnesium, so the magnesium floating around in your blood serum.
Right.
But here is the massive biological catch. Only about 1% of the body's total magnesium lives in the blood.
Wait, 1%? Where's the rest of it?
The other 99% is locked away inside your cells, in your tissues, and inside your bones.
Oh, wow. So relying on a blood test for magnesium is like checking the oil dipstick in your car and using that to assume your gas tank is full.
Yeah.
We've literally been looking in the wrong place.
Exactly. We've been checking the wrong tank entirely. Your blood serum levels are fiercely regulated by the body because, well, keeping the heart beating is top priority.
Right. That makes sense.
So if your blood levels drop even a tiny bit, your body will actually cannibalize itself. It'll pull magnesium out of your bones and tissues just to keep the blood levels looking stable.
Hold on. If my body is constantly raiding my skeleton's magnesium vault just to keep my blood looking normal, wouldn't I feel that? Like, wouldn't my bones be visibly weakening?
You would think so. But bone turnover is a really slow process. You don't feel osteoporosis happening overnight, you know? The drain is entirely silent.
That's terrifying.
It is. By the time your blood test actually flags a low magnesium level, your cellular gas tank has been completely empty for a very, very long time.
Does that mean the normal baseline we've been using for decades is just completely wrong?
Scientists are finally realizing that, yeah. We're seeing a major pivot to a concept called chronic latent magnesium deficiency, or CLMD.
Okay, CLMD.
Right. So in a recent analysis of that NA-ANES data, researchers stopped looking for severe deficiency and applied a more sensitive threshold for serum magnesium, which was 0.85 millimoles per liter.
And what happened when they used that number?
When they used this more accurate cutoff to define CLMD, they estimated that 67.8% of U.S. adults are walking around deficient.
Almost 68%. Over 2/3 of the adult population running on those blinking emergency lights.
Yeah.
So that leads to a really obvious follow-up question, I think. If we're all running on empty, why can't we just grab a cheap supplement off the pharmacy shelf and fix it? Like, what makes restoring this mineral so complicated?
To answer that, we have to look at a classic piece of investigation published back in 2001 by researchers Feroz and Graeber.
Okay.
They wanted to see what actually happens when you swallow a standard over-the-counter magnesium pill. At the time, and honestly even today, the most common, cheapest form of magnesium you'll find on a pharmacy shelf is magnesium oxide.
Oh, right, the huge chalky tablets that come in a massive bottle for like $5.
Exactly. It's an inorganic salt. So Feroz and Graeber gave healthy adults a dose of magnesium oxide, and then they measured their 24-hour urinary excretion.
Wait, why measure the urine?
Because the body filters excess magnesium through the kidneys. So measuring the urine tells you exactly how much actually made it across the intestinal wall and into the bloodstream.
Ah, okay, that's clever. So what did they find?
They found that magnesium oxide had a dismal fractional absorption rate of around 4%.
Wait, let me do the math on that. A standard 500 milligram magnesium oxide pill has, what, roughly 300 milligrams of actual elemental magnesium in it?
Roughly, yeah.
But if my body only absorbs 4% of that, I'm getting maybe 12 milligrams. I'm essentially swallowing a very expensive, poorly absorbed rock.
You're swallowing a rock. And there is a severe biological consequence to swallowing poorly absorbed rocks, unfortunately.
Oh.
If that inorganic salt isn't crossing the intestinal wall into your bloodstream, it stays in the digestive tract.
Which can't be good.
Definitely not. Unabsorbed inorganic salts exert a really powerful osmotic effect. Basically, water follows solutes, so the unabsorbed magnesium oxide actively draws water from your surrounding tissues directly into the lumen of your gut.
Ah, so pulling all that water into the intestines causes osmotic diarrhea.
Wait.
So you aren't restoring your nutrient levels at all. You are just taking a harsh laxative.
Which is exactly why so many people complain about intense stomach issues when they try to supplement. They think magnesium just doesn't agree with them, but it's really just the cheap formulation causing havoc.
Wow. So how did the scientific community solve the laxative problem?
Well, in the early 2000s, researchers like Walker and Schwett, they began studying organic forms. Specifically, they looked at attaching the magnesium mineral to an amino acid, creating forms like magnesium citrate or magnesium bisglycinate.
And did bonding it to an amino acid actually change how the body absorbed it?
Radically. So think of your gut like a busy concert venue. Okay.
Yeah, like this.
The standard pathways for absorbing free mineral ions are kind of like the general admission doors. They get extremely crowded, they're easily saturated, and a lot of the mineral gets turned away at the door. But when you attach magnesium to an amino acid like glycine, you trick the gut into using what's called a dipeptide transport system.
So it was like slapping a VIP badge on the magnesium, allowing it to just bypass the crowded general admission line and walk right through the private VIP entrance for proteins.
That is a great way to visualize it, yeah. Because it used that VIP door, these organic forms achieved absorption rates in the 28 to 33% range.
Huge jump from 4%.
Exactly. And because so much of it was actually getting absorbed, very little was left behind in the gut to draw in water, so the stomach issues largely disappeared.
Okay, so mystery solved then. The cheap inorganic oxide is a rock, and the organic forms like glycinate and citrate are the highly absorbable heroes. Case closed, right?
See, that was the golden rule for over 2 decades. Everyone just said organic is always better.
Okay, I sense a but coming.
But science rarely stays settled. Just recently, a massive twist emerged. In 2025, a new study was published that utilized advanced in vitro digestion and dialysis models to evaluate bioavailability.
Hold on, when you say in vitro digestion, you mean they built like an artificial stomach and
Yeah.
intestine in a lab to watch the digestion process in real time?
Yes, human digestion is incredibly complex. I mean, your stomach acid has a pH of around 1.5, which is highly acidic, but your intestines are much more alkaline.
Right.
These researchers simulated that entire journey, complete with standard diets and high-fiber diets, and they ran 7 different chemical forms of magnesium through the simulation. And the results completely flipped the organic is always better assumption on its head.
No way. What one?
An inorganic form.
Seriously?
Yeah, specifically, magnesium chloride hexahydrate achieved the highest average bioavailability of all the forms tested.
Wow.
It came in at roughly 68% bioavailability, completely beating many of the highly praised organic forms. Now, bisglycinate still performed exceptionally well, approaching the chloride, but that simple rule of inorganic equals bad was shattered.
Hold on, though. Oxide is inorganic, and it only absorbed at 4%. Chloride hexahydrate is also inorganic, but absorbed at 68%. Why is there such a massive difference between the two?
It really comes down to solubility. Oxide is incredibly dense and heavily resists breaking down in water. Chloride hexahydrate, on the other hand, dissolves almost instantly and completely, which makes it incredibly easy for the gut to take up.
I see.
But the researchers found something else fascinating. The physical delivery mechanism mattered almost as much as the chemical form itself.
What do you mean by physical delivery, like taking a pill versus a powder?
Exactly. When the magnesium was delivered inside a protective capsule, it yielded a much higher bioavailability, around 62.77%. But when it was delivered as a loose powder in a sachet, it only yielded 53.86%.
So let me see if I have this right. The chemical form of the magnesium in the physical capsule acts like an armored car. It protects the magnesium cache from getting robbed or destroyed in the highly acidic, dangerous neighborhood of your stomach, delivering it safely to the bank vault in your intestines. But if you just dump a loose powder in, it gets ambushed by the stomach acid before it ever reaches the vault.
That is exactly it. The capsule matrix shields the nutrient just long enough to reach that alkaline environment of the intestines where absorption actually happens. And honestly, once it gets into the cells, the human impact is nothing short of profound.
Yeah.
Yeah. Recent umbrella meta-analyses map these exact discoveries to everyday health, and the data is just staggering.
Well, let's dig into that human impact then. If 68% of us are deficient, what physically happens to the body when we finally fix the spark plug? Let's start with the heart.
Okay, so a 2025 meta-analysis published in the journal Hypertension looked at 38 randomized controlled trials involving over 2,700 participants.
That's a good sample size.
It is. And they found that in people who were hypertensive and had low magnesium, proper supplementation dropped their blood pressure significantly. We're talking over 7 millimeters of mercury in some individuals.
Wait, a 7-point drop. That's the kind of result people take daily prescription medications to try and achieve. How is a simple mineral doing that?
It comes back to how magnesium interacts with other minerals, specifically calcium. Calcium naturally causes your muscle fibers, including the smooth muscles lining your blood vessels, to contract and tighten.
Okay.
Magnesium acts as a natural calcium channel blocker. It physically pushes the calcium out, allowing the blood vessels to relax and dilate, which drops the pressure.
So without magnesium, your blood vessels are essentially locked in a permanent state of tension.
Exactly.
That's crazy. What about metabolism?
The metabolic effects are equally powerful. A major 2011 meta-analysis in diabetes care, which is later updated with pooled data from 35 different cohorts, revealed a massive 22% lower risk of developing type 2 diabetes for those with the highest magnesium intake.
A 22% reduction in diabetes risk. We have a global epidemic of type 2 diabetes. How does magnesium protect the pancreas?
Well, it's not just the pancreas. It's how your cells actually respond to insulin. Insulin is the key that opens your cells to let glucose in. But the insulin receptor itself literally requires magnesium to function.
Wait, Really?
Yeah. Without enough magnesium, the receptor changes shape, so the insulin key no longer fits the lock. Your blood sugar just stays high because the cells physically can't absorb it.
So you could be producing plenty of insulin, but if you don't have magnesium, your cells are basically just ignoring it. That is wild.
It is.
Does it have that same kind of relaxing effect on the brain as it does on the blood vessels?
It does, which is exactly why it has become a major focus for migraine research. Magnesium heavily regulates neuronal excitability.
Hmm.
In a migraine, you have this massive, abnormal wave of electrical activity across the brain.
Like a neurological short circuit.
Yes, exactly. There is a receptor in the brain called the NMDA receptor, which drives that overexcitation. Magnesium literally acts as the physical plug in that receptor. It blocks the signal.
Wow.
In fact, a 2016 meta-analysis published in Pain Physician proved that if someone goes into the emergency room with a severe acute migraine, intravenous magnesium can stop that migraine in its tracks in 15 to 45 minutes.
15 minutes. That is incredibly fast for an ER setting.
Mhm.
What about for people just trying to prevent them from happening in the first place?
Daily oral supplementation, specifically using forms like magnesium dicitrate at doses around 400 to 600 milligrams, significantly reduces the overall frequency and intensity of migraines. It basically keeps those NMDA receptors constantly stabilized.
Well, if it stabilizes brain excitability and relaxes blood vessels, I have to imagine it does wonders for sleep, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
In a 2024 double-blind crossover pilot trial, researchers tested 1 gram of a proprietary upgraded magnesium blend on adults with sleep disturbances.
And what happened?
Well, magnesium binds to GABA receptors in the brain. Those are the exact same pathways targeted by many anti-anxiety medications. It quiets nerve activity and shifts the body into the parasympathetic rest and digest state.
Did it actually change their sleep architecture, though?
Radically. The results showed measurable improvements not just in subjective sleep quality, but in objective metrics. We're talking increased deep sleep duration and really significant improvements in heart rate variability, or HRV, which is, the primary marker of your body's ability to recover from stress.
So lower blood pressure / diabetes risk, stop migraines, and deeper sleep. I mean, it sounds like a miracle mineral.
Yeah.
But I always like to ask, what is the catch? Is there a danger to taking too much?
Safety is absolutely paramount here. The U.S. Food and Nutrition Board has set a tolerable upper intake level of 350 milligrams per day for supplements in adults.
Okay.
Now, clinicians often prescribe higher doses, like the 600 milligrams for migraines we just discussed, but that really must be done under medical supervision. And crucially, there are interactions you must be aware of.
What kind of interactions?
A 2026 clinical guide put out a really stark warning about drug interactions. Magnesium is highly reactive, so if you take tetracycline antibiotics or thyroid medications like levothyroxine, magnesium will physically bind to them in the gut and completely prevent them from entering your bloodstream.
Oh, so magnesium is like an overzealous bouncer at the door of your digestive tract's nightclub. If you send the antibiotics into the club at the exact same time, magnesium just grabs them and kicks them to the curb. They never get in.
That's spot on. You have to separate the doses,
Yeah.
usually taking the medication at least 2 hours before or 4 to 6 hours after the magnesium, depending on the drug.
And earlier you mentioned the body filters excess magnesium through the kidneys. So what if your kidneys aren't functioning perfectly?
That is the ultimate guardrail. For anyone with impaired kidney function or chronic kidney disease, supplementation requires extreme caution and a doctor's strict oversight. Healthy kidneys are what clear the excess magnesium from the blood. If they can't clear it, levels can build up to toxic, dangerous amounts.
Right, that makes total sense. So to summarize this crazy journey we've been on for the listener, magnesium is this invisible spark plug required for over 600 bodily functions, from keeping our blood vessels relaxed to just letting insulin into our cells.
Yep.
More than half of us are walking around deficient, essentially running on emergency power. But standard blood tests completely hide the truth because they're only looking at the 1% of the mineral floating in the blood, not the 99% inside the cells.
The tests assure us we're fine, while the cellular tank runs entirely dry.
Right. And most importantly, if you try to fix it, formulation is absolutely everything. Whether you choose an organic form like glycinate that uses the protein pathways, or a highly soluble inorganic form like chloride hexahydrate wrapped in a protective capsule. That choice dictates whether you are actually fueling your cells or just, giving yourself an upset stomach with a cheap rock.
Exactly. And, this whole deep dive illustrates a really sobering truth about modern medicine. We are taught to trust our lab results implicitly. But normal on a lab reference range does not necessarily mean optimal for human thriving.
Right.
Our modern hyper-processed diets and high-stress lifestyles have silently stripped away these fundamental building blocks of human physiology. What is beautiful about this research, though, is that science is finally teaching us how to thoughtfully, deliberately put them back.
It really makes you wonder about the future of supplementation, doesn't it? If the protective capsule and the chemical delivery system matter just as much as the mineral itself, what happens in 5 years?
It's a great question.
Are we going to see nanotechnology delivering magnesium directly to the cells? What about smart release capsules synced to our circadian rhythms, dropping the exact right dose of magnesium into our gut at 10 p.m. just as our brain is trying to power down for sleep? I mean, if we're already engineering the armored car, the next step is clearly programming the GPS.
I wouldn't be surprised at all.
Well, thank you so much for joining us in the Deep Dive Lab today. If you enjoyed this exploration, please follow and subscribe so you don't miss our next real-time scientific journey. See you next time.